Welcome to Terraforming Mars. Today, I'm going to get started playing Terraforming Mars solo mode. But before I start playing solo mode, I thought I'd kind of show you guys how to play Terraforming Mars a little bit. So, in Terraforming Mars, we have 3 objectives that must be completed before the game is over. And solo mode is the same thing. All 3 of these objectives have to be complete for the game to be over. But in solo mode, those 3 objectives have to be done within a certain amount of generations. And when you're playing solo, you have this many generations to complete the game. If you do not terraform the planet before this is up, then you lose, and you're unable to terraform the planet well. And so, we're going to be showing you guys how to play solo mode. Now, solo mode is basically the same as playing the real game, so that's another thing to note. There is a couple of things that you won't get too carried away with in solo mode, though. You probably won't get too carried away with playing cities, because when you play against other players, you're trying to get the most victory points at the end of the game. And so you won't focus too much on victory points. You will focus mostly on trying to terraform Mars. That's the object of playing solo mode, rather than trying to beat everybody else while terraforming Mars. So that's the difference between solo and multiplayer, and that's really the only difference, really. Everything else is pretty much the same. So, here we have a production phase. The brown is the production phase of each one of these things. We have mega credits, steel, titanium, plants, energy, or power, and heat. Okay? At the end of each generation, or round, if you will, depending on what you're producing for each one of these brown boxes, how much is how much you get at the end of the year. So if I had this for plants producing 2, I'd get 2 cubes here for plants. When you have 8 cubes, you can turn 8 plant cubes into 1 greenery tile. And whenever you place a greenery tile, that will also increase the oxygen. And so, increasing the oxygen from 0 to 14 is one of the goals. So that would only increase the oxygen by 1 step. So I'd have to do it 14 times. That's a lot of work. Now, heat, temperature is a little bit easier. So if I was producing, let's say, I was producing 2 heat at the end of a generation was done, and I was producing, 3 power at the end of the generation, I would get 3 cubes for power, or energy if you will, and I would get 2 cubes for the heat. And then, once I got 8 heat cubes, I would be allowed to increase the temperature. Increasing the temperature is a little bit easier, but it still has to go to +8 from -30 Celsius. So that is still quite a lot of work to do. But it's still a little easier because at the end of each generation, if you have cubes here, meaning there were cubes here before you got the cubes from your production phase, they would actually get converted into heat. So after a full generation goes by, if there's still cubes sitting here, they will get converted into heat, and then you'll have even more heat cubes to increase the temperature. And so increasing the temperature is a lot easier than increasing the oxygen, for sure. Now this is our currency, mega credits, and you can even have a minus score of mega credits, meaning you'll produce a whole lot less mega credits. And in order to play cards, you are going to need credits. So this is a very important factor. But there are cards that have these building tags on them, and there are cards that have these space tags on them as well. And so, if you have a card that has this tag or this tag on it, you can pay a certain amount of steel cubes or titanium cubes for the cost of a card. And for every steel, it's 2 credits. For every titanium, it equals 3 credits. And at the end of the generation, if you're producing a certain amount, that's how much you're going to get at the end of each generation. And that also includes mega credits. The mega credits have actually 2 things going for them. It's always your terraforming rating plus whatever you have here for mega credits. That combined will go here for the amount of credits you get at the end of each generation. Also, normally when you play the game, you'll always start at 20. So your terraforming rating is 20, so you would get 20 in the beginning of the game, unless you raised it. 20 plus whatever you have here. So you'd get at least 20 credits, most likely. Unless somehow you played a lot of cards that decreased it to -5. And that's the lowest it can go, too. So that is something to note. So that's kind of basically how it works. Now, when you play the game, everybody is going to start with 10 cards. And for each card they decide to keep, it's going to cost them 3 credits. And I kept 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 cards. So because I kept 6 cards, I'm going to pay 3 credits for each of them. At the beginning of the game, each person's going to start with a corporation as well. And so my corporation is Point Luna. And so it's going to give me 38 credits. But after I get those 38 credits, they're going to get deducted from these cards here. So it's going to be a lot less. And so I'll be limited in the first generation how many cards I can play, depending on how many credits I have. Of course, my corporation does other things too. It also gives me a titanium production rate by 1 more, so that's useful if there's a lot of space cards. And then it also lets you play, so as an effect happens whenever an effect goes into play. So you can do effects as many times as you want, as long as they work. So when you play an Earth tag, including this, you draw a card. So at the beginning of the game, I'm going to get a free extra card because this is the effect of that card. And whenever I play a card that has this tag on it, I will get a free card. So that's really cool. That's a very useful corporation, especially for this game, where, you don't want to buy too many cards, because you want to save your money. Now, another thing, we're playing with Prelude as well as the main game, and so with Prelude, you get a couple of Prelude cards to start in the game. I got a choice of 4, and then I got to pick 2, and I already went ahead and picked the 2. And so, after I get all my stuff and pay for my cards, the first thing I'm going to do is play these 2 Prelude cards. And so this one is going to let me place a city tile, which in this case is not super useful for me, but it's going to increase my mega credit production by 2 steps, so that'll be useful. And then Dome Farming over here is going to increase my mega credit production by 2 steps as well, but it's also going to increase my plant production by 1 step as well. And so basically my titanium's going to have 1, my plant's going to have 1, and my mega credit production is going to go up by 4. So that's pretty useful to start the game off like that. And so I got a couple more things to do to get the game ready for the actual solo gameplay. So we will sign off for the moment and get started in the next video.